Hey, we're back.
We're back. We're bad. I'm black. You're mad. Let's go. I can't believe I did that. Let's see if anybody would know where that's from. We'll do
Right.
like a little trivia. Anybody that
Yeah.
knows
Comment.
was yes, put that in the comment below. What movie is that from? We're back. We're bad. I'm black. You're mad. Ooh, okay.
Damn, yeah.
Anyway, yes, yes. We just saw Zack Snyder's Justice League, and hell, what'd you think?
Are you kidding me? Seriously, are you kidding me? I I'm a little speechless actually. It was terrific. It was absolutely terrific. Zack Snyder for me can be a give or take. It can be a hit or miss.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I realized the potential of Man of Steel and Batman versus Superman, they were good. Some parts were better than others, and some parts were just not working for me at all. God, I gotta say, man, this Snyder's cut, woo, hello. I mean, it was everything you would really ask out of a comic book type film. I think I was blown away.
This fucking rocked. This was, I mean, seriously, dude. And I'll be honest. I was rooting for Zach to stick the landing, but at the same time, I I would have been okay if he didn't, because I felt like, you know what, the story behind how he got this off the ground and how him and the fans was able to get this movie into reality. If it would have just been okay, I would have been okay with it, because it would have been his vision. But I never thought in a million years that he would have exceeded expectations and not only stuck the landing, but I mean destroyed it.
I agree with everything you just said. In fact, I would go as far as to saying what they did with the 2017 version was criminal.
Yeah,
Was
yeah,
criminal what they did to the 2017 version. By the way, this is going to be a spoiler review. I mean, we're not going to hold anything
yes,
back, so just be
yes,
warned. It's going to have a
yes.
lot of spoilers in this one.
Yeah,
Um,
because really, really, how could you do a review that's not spoiler that would be satisfying? Because a non-spoiler review literally would be, "Oh, that was awesome! Like that thing when that happened. Oh man, and when the Flash did the thing. Oh, and you remember that other thing? Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Uh huh. And then when Cyborg. Oh my God, heart and soul. And thank you for listening to a non-spoiler review. That's the review
right,
we would have
right,
given.
yeah. Thank
So
you.
yes, spoiler.
So we just did this non-spoiler review just now.
That's true.
Okay, so now we're going to switch over to the spoiler review now, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, here we go. Because you almost have to compare the 2017 version with this version just to get a perspective. In fact, if I was teaching a class in filmmaking and
Mm-hmm.
screenwriting right
Mm-hmm.
now,
Right. Right.
oh, this would be part of the curriculum. I would be showing these movies back to back and showing
Right.
exactly how good story, good characters are developed,
Yeah.
how they're realized, and just the art of filmmaking in general. To see it kind of reminds me when we were in film school, right? You would have
Right.
I remember we would have these classes, like a cinematography class or even a directing class, where
Right.
they would give you the same scene and you would have to either shoot or direct that scene,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then two or three other classmates would do the same scene, but
Mm-hmm.
everybody did their own version, right? And there was
Right.
always those versions that everybody kind of said and went, well, oh well, whatever. But then there was those particular scenes that everybody said,
Yeah.
holy shit, where did this
Don't you
vision
hate?
come from?
And mind you, if everybody's directing and editing the same scene, they're all going to be different, and they're going to all have their different take and style. But then
Right.
there's always that sob that comes out and blows your mind, and then you just hate him for it. You hate him because
Yes, yes.
he'll find a way to take the same scenes that everybody else has and has a visual take to it, and do it in a way that it didn't even occur to you. And that's the Snyder cut. That's what that is.
Yeah, when you look at the Josh Whedon version and you look at the Snyder cut, you're just going,
Oh yeah.
Josh, Go back to school, baby.
Let me break it down this way.
Uh-huh.
Now, knowing that you've just seen the Snyder cut, but
Yes.
also you went back. You went back and saw the Whedon version. What was that? What was that experience like?
Criminal. I'll say it again. It was criminal. When I first saw it, I did not like it. It didn't work for me at all. It felt cluttered, choppy. I didn't understand anything really happening. There were some choices made there that I'm just going, it's just freaking goofy, and I don't understand why they made these choices. Not knowing really what the difference was between the Zack Snyder version and his version at that time. So,
well, I mean, nobody knew. Nobody knew.
Nobody knew, right? So you're going, maybe Zack Snyder has lost it, right? So, but I have a theory, Greg. I have a theory.
Okay,
my theory is that Joss Whedon was actually an undercover agent sent in by Marvel to fuck this movie up. I believe that he was the Trojan horse that they sent in to fuck this movie up because it makes no sense. The choices he made on this movie. Now, trying to play devil's advocate, I'm sure that the studios had notes. I'm sure they were putting the screws to him, saying, listen, we got to have this movie only 2 hours long. It can't be a second longer. We won't stand for it. So maybe he was under some pressure to do that in some respect.
Right.
But at the same time, when you realize he went back and reshot certain scenes that you see in the Zack Snyder version, you're looking at those same scenes that he reshot and you go, oh my God, why would you do that? It was just the wrong choice on every level, from a screenwriting point of view, from a storytelling point of view, and from even a visual point of view. Yeah. I mean, visually, they were less interesting. Writing-wise, it was less interesting.
What can you be specific? Like, give me a scene or an example that you felt.
Just the look of the film. Man, the cinematographer of this film had to be livid. I would imagine the cinematographer would be livid after making these amazing images, and it had that kind of cool, dark, shadowy kind of look to it. It was moody, it was emotional, but it kind of grounded it to where I wouldn't say it was like, real life or anything like that, but it felt more.
It felt
important,
adult, where I think the lighting in the Wheaton version, it felt more comic booky. They pumped in the exposure. They beefed up the saturation, made everything nice, bright, and colorful. Yeah, I think Snyder was going for kind of Lord of the Rings meet Excalibur.
Yes,
because
that's a beautiful analogy. I think that's exactly what that was. Yeah,
I mean, just look at the two openings, and between the 2017 version and the Snyder Cut version, the 2017 version has that bad video with Superman and he's not wearing a mustache. Yeah, he's not really wearing a mustache, but yet there's a mustache underneath the CG lip. That was just so distracting that you're just kind of going, what the hell? And then they were playing this kind of generic music where you're just kind of like, okay, right off the bat, it's just you're not really connected. And then you have that Batman interrogation with the parademon, and now the reveal Batman was kind of cool when you first reveal him, but then you just sit there and you watch that scene, and then you walk out of it kind of going, all right, I guess that's a way of doing it. But then you look at the you look at this opening, and you're seeing the death of Superman.
Perfect. I mean, really perfect.
It's so perfect, but it also aligns with where the death of Superman opens Justice League in a similar fashion that Bruce Wayne is running through the streets of Metropolis being destroyed by Zod and Superman from Man of Steel. So there's a connection right off the bat. And hearing Superman scream echoes throughout the world was so beautiful. And I don't know about you, but I think at that moment I was like, oh my God, I think I'm in love. Because
well, seriously, you knew right then. I mean, at that moment, you're kind of going, wow, this is going to be something special,
Yes. Yeah. And it was. And it just kept growing. So So I went back and I looked at the 2017 Justice League, and and I had the same exact feelings that I had the first time I saw it. There were things in the movie I did like, and again, a lot of it is actually the stuff I liked was the stuff that Snyder did in that
that
movie
they left
because
in, right? Yeah.
that they left in because you got to remember that Warner Brother and Whedon didn't remake Zack Snyder's movie, but what they did do is either shorten scenes that they did leave that he directed, or rearranged it, or did color correction that was really bad, or these poor choice of music, and then the stuff that Whedon did was literally reshot scenes that Snyder did. And for point in case, now there's a scene where in the Snyder cut where Diana shows up to Bruce when he's working.
He's working on
plane.
the new Bat plane. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's on the bat plane, and she shows up, and then she comes on board, and she talks about Darkseid. She talks about the Age of Heroes and how the Age of Heroes had stopped Darkseid in the flashback. All that scene is taking place inside the bat plane, but then her narration goes through the scene where Darkseid comes and the Age of Heroes wins that battle. Now the Wheaton version has her telling him the same story, except this time it's Steppenwolf instead of Darkseid. But instead of just leaving it on the plane, they're literally walking on the side of a lake as she's telling the story.
What does that
stuff
add?
like that. Yes, that's my point. What does that? Why not just keep that in? And maybe you just change the name. It's not Darkseid, it's Steppenwolf. But instead, they took that and reshot that, but it had no purpose except for the fact that Cyborg was watching them from a distance at the end of the Wheaton version. But at the same time, in this version, because they established Cyborg power of everything computer, he already knew they were looking for him, and he contacted her through the computer in the Snyder cut. But they had to do that because they cut out all of Cyborg's stuff. You're right. It's criminal.
Yeah. That going back to that beginning that we were talking about, and the way that he set up the story, with the death of Superman, and then the scene. You go right from there to the scene where Lois goes to the Superman memorial that's been destroyed,
right
next to where the ship is, and she gives the cop a cup of coffee, and that establishes that she goes back to this spot, on a regular basis, on a daily basis, which comes in handy later on, and shows you that, hey, there's going to be a reason why she's there.
Oh yeah. But what's clever about it is that they don't point a finger to it.
Yes, it's subtle.
It's very subtle. And if I'm not mistaken, don't quote me on it, but I think that cop that she gave a cup of coffee to is the original Jimmy Olsen from the 1978, 79
right?
Superman. Yeah, I mean
that would totally make sense.
I hope I'm correct, because somebody looks that up and I'm not correct, and we're here about it in comments.
Okay, well, please tell us if that's true or not.
yeah. Let's find out if I'm right or I'm not. But if you're not a fan of Justice League, or you're not a fan of Zack Snyder, then 9 out of 10 you may not be a fan of this, because the argument could be made that if I didn't like Justice League, which is 2 hours, why the hell will I sit through 4 hours of a movie I didn't like when it was 2 hours? But first of all, this movie is a superior movie than the Whedon version in every way possible.
In fact, there's nothing that I can think of that Whedon did in his version that I would say, yeah, I like that version better.
I did find one. One. There was one moment, and it has to do with the Flash. I love the arc that Snyder gives with the Flash in this movie, to the point that at the very end it gets very emotional, and I was amazing how emotional I got when I got to the end of it. And since this is spoilers, I can spoil it. But now the Whedon version did have something that I actually said, "Wow, That's really good. And that's the moment where they're going to face Steppenwolf for the very first time. And Batman just recruited Barry Allen. And the moment that they see Steppenwolf, you see the Flash is shaken. And he tells Bruce, he says, look, I know you guys have handled bigger things, but I handle common thugs. He says, the best I do is I push and I run away. And Bruce, so you could tell that Flash is scared. And Batman gives what I thought was one of the best advice that he can give to a young hero. And he says, just save one person. That's all you right now. Just concentrate on that. Save one person, because Steppenwolf had those, he kidnapped scientists, and then when he says, "What do I do after that?" and then he says, "You'll figure it out." I give props when I see it. That's Wheaton, or that's either Wheaton and or Warner Brothers or writer, whoever came up with that. I wish that was in here, because I just thought that was excellent advice. Because what does Barry do? He then turns around and he saves one person, and then he saves all the other scientists. And I think if you would have dropped that in the Snyder version, then all of a sudden, when Batman, which is what a great advice that Batman will give, instead of overwhelming the kid with saying, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this, and understanding that this is the first time this kid has ever been in battle before, and not just any battle. He's up against some space alien creature, and he just tells him, just save one person, and you'll
Right.
figure out what to do next. And then if you pair that with the end of the movie, where, let's face it, the Justice League loses. They fucking lose at the end of the movie. But the one person that can save them, one person that does save them, is the Flash, and the Flash has to do it when he's wounded. And as he's running, yeah, you got to run faster than he's ever run before. And he's trying to talk himself into, you can do this, Barry. You can do this. You run, run, run. And what does he do? He saves the world. And of course, which is funny, he does it in kind of a Superman's way, of turning time backwards. But
Right.
how great was that? And then, and again, how good the writing was. They set that scene, the ending scene, up at the resurrection of Superman, because Barry tells them when they're about to bring Superman back to life, he says, "Look, I can create a charge that can possibly bring him back to life, but that's a rule I don't like to break, because it messes up time." And you remember that scene where they're about to dip Superman in, and you see that picture of Jonathan Kitt or Kevin Costner, and it looks like it's going in the water, and then
Right.
Flash runs, and he starts to run to touch the mother box, and he's running real fast. You see that picture starting to go backwards and stuff like that. It's so subtly, but yet at the same time, they paid that off at the end of that movie. That's great storytelling right there.
Yes. Yes.
But
And
that would be the one scene with the Wheaton, though, that I will say I did wish that was in. I understand why, because Zack did not use anything that Wheaton have shot, but that was the one part I did like better than what was in the snack version, the
right.
Zack version.
I'll agree with that. That's a good point. I didn't even think about that, but yeah, that's a great point.
And I'm going to try to be as fair as possible. I think the culprits. I mean, again, how much I'm not going to claim to know what we knew or what he was told or what he added. Unfortunately, it's a really Warner Brothers decision. The things that Warner Brothers did with Wheaton was some of the worst choice in that version of Justice League, and yet to be able to see this scene, this movie fully realized in almost every scene. I mean, okay, first of all, I saw this movie twice, and I'm very proud to say I did not have to go to the bathroom both times. Both times I sat through 4 hours of this movie, and I did it again. I
That's
did it
where
twice.
training comes in handy, Greg. Training.
I know. I was very proud of myself. And the second time, I was certain. The second time, I was certain. All right, okay. I'm going to probably hit a break, and then I'm going to go. And sure enough, I sat through the whole thing again, and I just got so emotionally connected with these characters, because I think the problem is that Warner Brothers, because of what the backlash that they got on both Man of Steel and Batman v Superman, they changed course in Justice League. And the problem is that Zack Snyder and Josh Whedon are totally two different directors. Totally two different directors. And they wanted to make Justice League Avengers. That was apparent. And because they were trying to make it more funny and make it more quippy, and they made the statement that this movie cannot be no longer than 2 hours, then you just sacrificed that movie, because the rough cut was at least 4 hours long. There's no way you're going to tell me you can make a good movie and edit it down a 4 hour version of a movie to 2 hours. Now, if you were really serious, maybe you could do it in 3. Maybe you could do a version
I
that's
can
similar.
see maybe cutting it down to 3, even though after seeing the 4 hour cut, I'd be going, why would you? But
Yeah.
I can see you doing it, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I
absolutely.
will say, though, and God, I'm sure there was a lot of politics involved with the studios and even with Josh coming on board and stuff and doing what he did. It almost seemed, I hate to say this, but it just felt vindictive. It's almost like,
Yeah.
I'm going to, we will teach you. Oh, you're going to learn this lesson. We are going to make a 2 hour superhero movie, and and we're going to show you how it's done.
Right.
And we're going to cut it down to 2 hours. We're going to use all of our notes, and we're going to show you, Zack Snyder, that this is how you make movies. And you're going to be put in your place, and this is how it's going to go down.
Well, it's funny because without seeing the Snyder Cut, I would just think, okay, obviously he made a longer movie that they didn't like. Maybe it fell into indulgence, and it's been done. Filmmakers and directors have maybe got too indulgent in their films before, and maybe even pretentious, But I had no idea when I sat through the Snyder Cut. I had no idea. Not only was it good, that it was great.
It was great.
It was
it's a great film.
It's a great film.
And I sometimes wonder, because studio executives don't always. I mean, sometimes I even wonder, did they even see this cut, or was it a situation where they heard it was 4 hours, or even if they did try to watch it for the 4 hours, were they on their cell phones the whole time? Were they were they doing that at the same time that they're on their call on a conference call, trying to sell their next project or trying to nail down their next gig?
Well, you would have to think so, because I don't know how you can see the 4 hour cut and choose the parts that you used in the 2017 release, because there were so many great moments that you said to yourself, well, why wouldn't you not use that? Okay, for example, the Wonder Woman scene where she breaks up the terrorists. Now, the way that it is shot in the Snyder Cut, it felt so real and so raw and it showed her true powers and what she can do. Okay, now maybe in your mind you could say, as a studio exec, you could say that's a little too R-rated. It's a little too violent, and we still want to, play it to a wider audience and stuff like that. So
PG-13 crowd.
So PG, exactly.
Yeah.
So we're going to lighten it up. We're going to, because it's a little too intense and stuff like that. Okay. Maybe I'll give you that. But there is a scene right after that where this little girl. Yeah, and this little girl, and she's saying, and Diana says, "Are you okay, princess?" And this little girl says, "I just want to know what's the line?" I'm now blanking, but
she says something along the lines of, "Can I ever be like you?"
She turns around and says, "You could be anything you want." Why on Mother's Earth would you freaking cut that?
It kind of brings a little tear to your eye too, because I know a lot of women that really look up to Wonder Woman. I mean, because there's not a lot of female superheroes and stuff out there that they had to look up to. So Wonder Woman was kind of like the first, right? So
look at the movie. I mean, the movie was a hit, and how many women that and men and boys and girls went and saw that movie? They supported that movie, and the first time you saw Wonder Woman, I know I had emotion when I saw her in No Man's Land in that war sequence, which is my favorite out of the entire movie. And so when you cut a scene where a little girl saying, "How can I be like you?" and then to have Wonder Woman say, "You could be anything you want." That scene lasts what? Maybe 20 seconds? Why the hell
Why
would you
cut it?
cut that?
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's choices like that you have you scratching your head and saying, I don't understand. Why would you cut a scene like that? Or why would or the one that really blows my mind is the introduction of Barry Allen in that car scene. It's it's so funny because sometimes when you watch a movie the first time, you get so excited and you get all caught up in it. So watching it the second time, I want to have much more of a critical eye. I figured, okay, now I've seen it. I know
Right.
how I feel, but yeah, let me watch it again. Maybe I'll feel a little different. And that scene, that moment still got to me. The choice of music that Zach used in that scene and the way that the way the action was directed made me kind of feel like I was in Barry Allen's shoes. And it was just so gorgeous. It was so beautiful. It was like the first time I felt like oh, this must be what it's like to have super speed. And for you to cut that, which would have been a great introduction to one of the superheroes that we don't know anything about and has never been on the big screen before. Again, I don't know why would you do that.
That scene really won me over with that character because in the
Mm-hmm.
original, or I won't say original, but the 2017 version, I
Yeah,
did not like that character. I just kind of thought he was kind of tagged on for comedy relief.
yeah,
And, you know, frankly, he got tired. He's just tiresome after a while because there was nothing behind it. And that
right.
one, how long does that scene last? Maybe 3 minutes, 4 minutes or
Yeah.
something like that. And that one scene, he won me over. It was like,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
it's like they told a little story in that little
Mm-hmm.
segment
Yes.
because you never see
Yes.
her again, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you set it
You
up, but
you
you never really see her again. But you
but
felt like there was a connection between them. There
yeah.
was this special bond. You saw that he had a heart, but he also had a sense of humor at the same time.
It told you everything you need to know about that character visually. And what's interesting is the fact that I've heard people online saying, "Well, you don't see Iris West in the scene in any of the other movies, so why even use her in that moment because you don't pay her off?" And my argument to that is, yeah, but they're going to the plan was to use her throughout his own movie, but this is their first connection, and then but more importantly but it's his backstory. It's who he is. It shows, like you said, it shows who this guy is within 5 minutes of that scene and what kind of guy he is. And then on top of that, it also I love the hot dog bit because you're thinking he's going to eat the hot dog himself, and then he's feeding it to the dog. That scene gave you a sense of wonder. And I felt the love, which is so funny. I felt because they had the attraction, that love at first sight when they pass each other in the
Hmm.
store. There was and the music choice in that was so beautiful, and it was also so different than anything that I've seen. It did remind me a lot of a little bit of the Quicksilver scene in X-Men: Days of Future Past. So when you get moments like that where it stands out and it's different from all the other characters' abilities, also it shows his ability. So again, that's a money scene, and it's so well done and so executed. Why cut it? But Warner Brothers, they cut great moments. It bogs the mind.
Dude, I'm telling you, the Amazonian scene, the
Oh yeah,
Amazons. I was like, these are some badass ladies, man.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
they were like just, and it was so well done the way they did the
yeah.
build up and the suspense. And the one thing that, see, it takes time to do certain things. And the one
Yes,
thing you need time to do is set up suspense.
yes,
You need time to set up suspense. You need beats. You need a rhythm to kind of do that. That opening
you.
scene when the
Mhm.
the box came to life and you saw the
Right.
Amazonians preparing for battle and
Yeah,
everything,
yeah,
and
yeah.
and just not knowing what's going to happen next, but the way he just kind of milked that, I thought, wow, now that's filmmaking.
And you want to know something else that added to that scene? The women talk to each other.
Yes.
They actually communicated to each other what's going on. I don't think the women ever talked to each other in the Wheaton version. It was
No.
literally just the box started to come alive. Steppenwolf showed up. They fight. He gets the box. They go. They leave. He
Yeah.
leaves, and that's
Yeah.
it.
I mean, dude, they cut the scene where after they close down the temple, right? They close down the temple, it's
Yeah,
shut down, and then it
yeah.
falls into the ocean,
Oh,
right? It
oh.
falls into the
Yeah.
ocean.
No,
And I'm going,
no.
why would
Why?
you not that that is awesome. Once again, we'll go back to the color grading and the look of the
Yeah.
movie, but it looked so much more dangerous and so much more menacing with just the way
Mm-hmm.
that even the because I was never a big fan of the flying things. What are they called?
Parademons.
The parademons, right?
Yeah.
They kind of look a little goofy to me. I mean, they never really
Uh-huh.
scared me, especially in the Joss Whedon version because it's so brightly lit. You see too much of them, right? You see too much of the detail. I
Mm-hmm.
will say in the Zack Snyder version with the color grading,
Mm-hmm.
they're more in
Yeah.
silhouette, and you don't really quite see them that clear. There's a few times you can see them more, so here and there, but
But
for the most
but when
part,
you
they look more menacing.
yeah, but that's because when you do see them, they appear more insect like, but
Yes,
that you never got in the Wheaton version.
right.
And I think the problem with the Wheaton version is again the color palette is so comic booky, but because they're trying to be like Marvel. If you look at the Themyscira scene, it that scene was so Lord of the Rings. It was
Hmm.
it was so like we're ready to go to battle. It was nightmarish. It was
Yes.
disturbing because there's a sequence where all the Amazon women first how much did you like when Steppenwolf shows up looking badass, looking so much better and so much more fierce. Like again, why would you change his design? His
I
design
don't
was
know. I
so
don't understand
perfect
that. I
in Zack Snyder film. Why would you change that to whatever the hell they had in the Whedon version?
The
They
Whedon
dumped it.
version looked like some guy at Comic-Con
It's like a
doing a
cosplay.
cosplay. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
It's just ugh.
but yet there's a sequence where Steppenwolf tells the Amazonians that I will bathe in your fear, and then Wonder Woman's mom, who plays the Queen, says, "Tell him what we think of fear."
Well, they
And
say that we have no fear, and they
we
attack
have
his
no fear,
ass,
and they
right?
attack exactly.
Yeah.
And there's this one nightmare moment where they're all ganging up on him as he's moving closer and closer to grab the box. And there's this moment. This really moment where Diane's mom, I guess it's her lieutenant, tells the queen, "You got to lock down the doors. You got to close up the tomb." And but
Which
she
I'm
doesn't.
sorry, that was badass, man. And the
Yeah,
Zack Snyder because they extended that a little bit, and the way they hammered those pylons.
but look at the tension of it though, because
Yeah.
at first the queen doesn't want to do that because all the soldiers, all her guards are inside the tomb, and she
Hmm.
believes we can fight them off. But then when her own lieutenant gets taken out, and the queen runs to her, and on her dying word she says, "Close the tomb." Then
Hmm.
she closes the tomb because now she understands how important it is not to let Steppenwolf get to the mother box. See,
Right.
that's building tension. That's also building character between the queen and and her soldier. You bought immediately. That scene made me love the Amazonian soldiers in a way that I never did in the Wheaton version.
I had to say, not even in the Wonder Woman versions,
That's true too. That's true too. But
because the way that was set up and the way that interaction was, you were so invested in that moment.
in a
And
short
it's
amount of
interesting.
time,
Yeah. And
yeah.
what was interesting, though, is because you had to find a way to trim it down, you
Hmm.
lost all of that.
Because the studios felt by trimming it down was going to make them more money. The problem is that they were cutting story, and
Right.
that's what ended up on the editing floor. But see, I think if your focus is to not make money, but make Marvel money, then then you're not looking for a 4 hour art film because really
Well,
that's
no, but
kind.
I guess they're putting trust in Joss Whedon because he knows best because he actually made all that money with the Avengers films, right? So,
But why do you think he was picked? Because
right.
again, because Warner's been trying to keep pace with Disney, and that's the reason why they rushed to get to the Avengers. And from what I've heard, Zach, he wanted to do the individual storylines first, and that which would have been the smart way to do. I always my feeling was always this. I always just believe that there's room for both studios. I mean,
Yes.
Marvel got the jump, because but if you think about it, DC has had their time in the sun for a long time with the first original Superman movie. Almost 11 years later, 89 Batman, and then the Dark Knight trilogy. So they've been in the sun. But Marvel was able to do something that Marvel Studios, because they didn't have two of their biggest heroes. They didn't have Spider-Man. They didn't have X-Men. So what did they have? They had Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, and the Avengers. So what did they do? They had a plan. And the plan was to just start introducing the audience to each one of these characters and to build up to the Avengers. And it worked, but it took a while to do it.
It took a while, and I think Justice League was it was rushed.
It was so rushed because when the moment that DC saw how much money Marvel was making with the Avengers and stuff like that, then they were just like, well, we gotta have one. But my feeling was, okay, but do it the right way.
And I think that's where they ran into problems. They started trying to do too much too fast.
Yes.
And that just gets problematic because when you start introducing characters that you can't really flesh out, hence why you have a 4-hour Justice League, because he did take the time to introduce certain characters that needed introducing.
Exactly. You think, it's funny because I heard Snyder said this in an interview. He said it wasn't like we wanted to do a 4-hour Justice League, but when you're already introducing 3 new characters, 3 new superheroes plus 2 other villains, you need time to let them breathe and let them flesh out. And then not to mention the fact that we're also bringing Superman back, but you really couldn't do it proper justice without giving it a longer runtime. I just get a little annoyed when I keep hearing people talk about, well, it's so 4 hours, it's so long. And the thing that annoys me though is this isn't playing in the theaters. Now, if this movie was coming out in the theaters, then I can maybe understand your point. Do I have 4 hours to give to the movie or whatever? But my thing is, it's on streaming. What do you care?
What do you care?
Streaming.
Right? Yeah. It's like a great miniseries. If anything else,
exactly. Just go watch an hour, and if you want to bail. You could stop it. You have the power. That's the thing about streaming. You have the power. That remote is the power. That pause button is the power.
Once again, it's a difference between a film and something else. But when you go back to just the terrace scene where Wonder Woman shows up, the opening of that, when the guys come in and they're shooting everybody and they're coming up the stairs, in this 2017 version, you got this Danny Elfman music playing in the background, and it's like they're going to the circus.
Yeah.
It's just telling you that there's nothing to worry about.
Yes, yeah. Well,
there's nothing to worry about. These guys, they only look dangerous. They're not really dangerous. You compare it to the Zack Snyder version. Who's the composer of that one?
Junkie XX.
Yeah. Well, he comes in there and he's got that kind of like that metal riff going,
Oh, yeah.
And it just feels more dangerous and more dark and more that there's more at stake here.
But also the music doesn't overwhelm the scene.
Right.
Because the music just indicates the danger that those people are in. On the Snyder version, I was just like amazed on how serious that scene was. It was almost like I was watching a drama. This movie just kind of transcended the comic book genre. This played more as a graphic novel, a more of a sophisticated take on comic books characters. In this version, Wonder Woman killed those guys. She killed those guys.
There's another thing. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of blowback about, Wonder Woman and Batman and even Superman and those guys. They actually kill people in this version, in this thing. But I'm going, they're terrorists going to blow up kids.
Thank you.
I can live with that.
Thank you.
And I loved how they did it. It was so artfully done visually with the hat floating down. And it's like, yeah, she killed him. Mm-hmm. They all deserve to die.
Yeah. It's like, when you threaten children and dogs, you're in trouble.
You got to go. You got to go.
But then we did write a script and did a movie where we did
We
actually,
kill children
Greg.
and dogs. That's true.
Yeah. And we've been in those rooms when you get those notes. As writers, we had four producers all giving us contradicting notes for us to write, never listening to each other because they didn't care. They just wanted to get their notes across. You want that in scene, and then you try to put it together. You realize, dudes, these notes don't make sense. They're contradicting each other, but they don't care.
When you see written by in the credits, you
Hmm.
don't realize that, well, that's just the guy that got the credit. There's other
Yeah.
writers and other producers and everybody else that throws in their 2 cents. And part of the politics and part of the finesse is to try to figure out how to make those notes work
Hmm.
within what you kind of started out with. The problem is you can't make all of those notes work. And even though you're forced to put them in there, you kind of have to do it under duress. And unfortunately, it leads to a very rocky road because they look at it and they go, it's not quite working. And you go, well, that's because it's your notes. It's not working because of those. And then they
Yeah.
go, well, I think my note still works. You just can't make it happen. So I'm going to get another writer to come on board and he'll make those notes or she'll make those notes work.
Well, and also beware that whenever you see a movie where you have like story by and you see like 5 names, and then you have written by and you see about 8 names underneath it, or 3 names or 4 names, and then you wonder why the movie doesn't work.
And those are just the people who got the credit.
Yeah, because God knows exactly how many other people throw in notes after notes after notes. And really, that's how I feel like the 2017 Justice League was. It felt like it was a committee. It felt like it was a patch job. It felt like they were afraid because you had a 4 hour art film and they didn't feel like they were going to make any money off of. So they got the guy that did the Avengers that made over $1 billion and said, "Hey, give us that Avenger feel for Justice League,"
Yeah.
and he tried because he kept doing those things where you're like, well, that's very Avengers like, but this is Justice League. And it still had so much of Zack Snyder's story and his DNA that they clashed. And the tone in Justice League did not match the tone of Batman v Superman or Man of Steel. So the audience were kind of like, this is kind of weird. This movie does not feel like a Zack Snyder film. And then when you start seeing clips that were in the trailers that weren't in the movie, then you knew, okay, then where's the movie that I saw in the trailer? That's not on the screen, and I want to see what you were advertising for.
It makes your heart sink when you realize that there was a good chance that we would have never seen this version
Yeah,
ever, ever.
I
And you kind
know.
of wonder how many times that has happened in the studio, the studio
Oh,
business is how many great movies have maybe gotten buried or changed or completely forgotten that would have been amazing. And gosh, this is such a great lesson in
yeah.
the politics of that and
Hmm.
how the artist sometimes the artist does know best. I won't say all the time. There's some times where, like you said, it can be a little bit overwrought, a little bit pretentious. And I
Hmm.
guess you could even argue that this one suffers from some of those elements. I mean, I've heard people say, well, it's got all that slow motion in it and it's got all this and
Did
stuff.
that
And
bother you? I'm curious because let's
it
let's let's
didn't
address
bother
that.
me at all. And I'll tell you why.
Yeah, let's
I
get
will
into
tell you
this.
why.
Okay.
Film is a visual medium
Hmm.
because everybody's been raised on television and everything. We have kind of lost that cinema aesthetic, if you
and
will.
not and not just television. I mean, we're talking YouTube, you're talking
Right.
Vine, you're talking TikTok, you're talking about taking these things called content and making them shorter and shorter and shorter, and yeah,
And people are under the impression that being told everything is now the way to go. I'm being told what's happening. I'm being told how I
right.
feel. I'm just being narrated to.
Hmm.
And one thing I love about this movie is he took the time to
Hmm.
have those moments. I even like the shot of Aquaman when he walks out to the pier and he's drinking the drink, it's got that rock tune, and he takes the shirt off, and he's kind of posing. He's kind of posing there for a minute, and the waves hit him and he kind of disappears. I'm going, yeah, that's a little much. But you know something? I dug it. I said, fucking A, Zack
You
Snyder. You
know,
go, boy. You go.
let me tell you something. Not only did that didn't bother me, I rooted for it. I
Yeah.
rooted for every 2 minute music video, because this man has gone through so much. with all the stuff that's happened to him, for the fact that the fans got him to finish his film, and this is a love letter to the fan, and it was almost saying, I'm going to give you everything. I'm going to give you what I think interests me.
The way he used that slow motion in the action scenes, I thought was brilliant. Snyder has this ability to freeze time.
Yeah.
And you see these images that you would see in a comic book, right? You would see
Yeah,
these stills
absolutely.
of like, the bullet casing flying through the air.
I mean, how great is the Barry Allen Iris West slow mo? That was a story. That was a little mini movie in that rescue scene, and how beautiful that was. And I even laughed at when he had the guy drop the sandwich, and then there was a slow mo of the sesame seed falling off. I think that was Zack Snyder trolling his critics. He's like, I'll give you slow motion.
Yeah, take this sesame seed, damn it. Take it.
And I love the audacity of it. But I'll tell you this, for me, it never distracted or took away from the story. And that's what's important. It was never just doing it just to be doing it. I always felt like it was still there to add. And even you could even say the Aquaman walking out to the pier, that was his backstory. That was his character growth. That was for that character. And it was just something visual. And again, it's so visually cool when the waves just literally wash upon him until he disappears into the sea. Even though he did throw that bottle of beer into the ocean, it's polluting, and he should know better. Way to go, Aquaman.
But sometimes you can tell character just through images.
Yes.
It doesn't always have to be dialogue or interactions with others. It can just be someone sitting in a room or someone standing on a pier. But you can do things visually that makes you know about that person's. Terrence Malick, we talked about him last time, made a career out of doing that,
But don't you feel though that they want to be told what's going on? They want to know quickly, and they want to know now. And because whenever you try to tell something visually, then they would call you pretentious. I used to when I got into film school, one of the things that we were taught right away is that film is a visual medium, that you want to make sure you show what's going on more than just telling what's going on. And that's what Zack Snyder does. He really does these incredible visuals. Like, for example, when the fisherman looks like he's about to drown, his boat's about to sink, and he looks up, and Aquaman's he was already there. He was just standing there, and the water's hitting there. That's just fucking awesome.
That's a great image. That's just an iconic image.
Exactly. And you just kind of soak that up, and it's like, oh, he's already there. But yet, if you look at that same sequence in the Whedon version, well, we got to show that he's swimming towards the boat so that he can help.
Yeah, he flies in or something, I think, right? He flies in and lands on it or something.
So he can help. I
think it's very interesting, Greg, that they had to explain the fact that he got to the boat when they cut all this other stuff explaining major characters.
Let's talk about Cyborg, because now talk about a visual language that they just completely got rid of. I love Cyborg's origin story. We have his flashback about when he was a football star and the relationship between his father and the death of his mom. But then there's this wonderful moment where his father is talking to him on the tape recorder because he can't talk to him personally. And his father is telling him the type of power that Cyborg has. And there's that scene where Cyborg goes up on the roof, and he's starting to start to use his powers and start to see how his powers work through his father's narration. And you get this wonderful image of his father saying that if you wanted to, you could set off every nuclear weapon in the world and destroy the world. If you wanted to, you could enrich the lives of anybody because you have access to all the accounts, all the money, all the computers all over the world. That he was basically a cyber god. But the real strength and the real power is for you not to do those things. And then they show the sequence where he sees the waitress that is struggling, the waitress that is being evicted, and the waitress that only has like $12 in her account.
Yeah,
which I've lived through a lot of those moments.
Been
So I
there,
was
been
very
there, done
familiar. Yeah,
that.
I've
You
been
know.
there, done that. But the thing that never happened to me is when Cyborg was able to manipulate the machine so that she won this lottery that gave her 100,000 in her ATM account, and I knew everything I need to know about that character without ever by all visuals, and for them to again cut that out of the 2017 on a new superhero that you
That you
knew
never
nothing
met before,
about.
that you knew nothing about.
Exactly, that you would cut that. I thought that was I thought that was criminal. I thought that and that and also, and this is something I thought was interesting, that watching the Snyder cut and seeing it at its full length with all the characters, I've noticed that not only out of all the characters, the one that got hit the most as far as his backstory, all of the stuff that was cut out, which was a man of color, but then you look at all the other actors that were cut out of the movie, which is Iris West, which was his
Right.
mother, which was there's an Asian character that works with his father,
Mm-hmm.
and I think there was one other oh no, Martian Manhunter. We'll get to that. All of
Mm-hmm.
these people were people of color that worked literally on the editing floor, and I just thought that was fascinating. It's like,
Well, not only that, but gender. I
mhm,
mean,
yes,
the other ones that suffered the most were women. I mean, this is a perfect example. The
yeah.
Lois Lane scene when she's talking to Martha, Superman's mom,
Why'd you say that
is
name? Why'd you say that name, Martha? Why'd you say that name? Sorry, I had to do that.
You
Sorry,
had to do it, right?
I had to do
But
that.
having to say that scene once again with the lighting and everything,
I love
and
that
what they were
scene.
talking about, and it was so poignant, and the
Yeah,
fact that Lois had not gone back to work yet. She was
yeah,
still grieving, and it took the time to show that she was grieving, and
yeah.
that Martha comes by and talks to her, and they
Mhm.
had this beautiful conversation about why she lost the farm and everything. It was so much more fitting, and
Yeah.
so much more feeling behind that, and so much more sincerity. Whereas if you look at the Joss Whedon version, and I don't know why he chose to reshoot this, but then he reshoots it where she's at the Daily Planet.
Hmm.
They're in a coffee room, which is like the most
Yeah.
uninteresting visual
Yeah.
place that you could shoot at.
Yeah.
And then they have this moron coming in and say, "Hey man, I want
Your informant.
your informants, yeah, or something
Yeah.
like that,
Yeah.
yeah." And they had that little banter back and forth, like you mean to tell me you're still doing the whole sexist thing where the guy doesn't respect the woman and stuff like that, especially when she's the top reporter, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then you add to that, there's this weird part, and I'm going, was that supposed to be funny? Where Martha goes, Clark used to say you were always so thirsty,
Oh
and I'm
yeah.
going, what? Even she
Yeah.
goes, what?
Yeah.
And then she goes, "Oh no, I mean hungry, hungry. That you're always hungriest reporter, working at the paper." And I'm going,
That made no
I'm
sense.
scratching my head, going,
Yeah.
it just kind of dismisses the whole thing, right? Whereas at least the scene in her apartment felt so real and so
Hmm.
good. Now I will say, the only problem with that scene for me, anyways, is
Hmm.
when Martha
Right.
leaves
Right.
and she goes
Yeah.
into the hallway,
Yeah.
she turns into Martian Manhunter, and you realize that it's Martian Manhunter, not really Martha. And I
Yeah.
thought that kind of diminished
Yeah.
the
I.
power of that scene. And I
Yeah.
really, if I was to say, Zach, I think even if you want to bring in Martian Manhunter at the very end, I
Yeah.
think that's
Like he
cool.
did. Yeah.
Yeah, like you totally do that. I just don't think you need to put it here because I think you kind of almost defeated
It.
yourself on that one.
It undercut it, and I totally agree. I was going to ask you that because maybe he didn't realize how powerful that scene turned out to be. And the only thing I could think about is that, but again, I'm reading into this
Right.
because the movie doesn't really have it. But knowing Martian Manhunter's powers, knowing
Hmm.
that he's, and knowing he can read people and everything, that I felt
And that he
like
can
maybe,
change his form and
and he
stuff.
could,
Yeah.
yeah, he could change his form and stuff. And there's a word,
Empath.
yes,
Hmm.
that's what he is. And I thought, well, he need to do that because he needed Lois to get out of that apartment because Lois has done this routine throughout the movie where she would go get the cop coffee, go to the
Mm-hmm.
monument, the Superman monument, and then she'd go back home. And he needed, I think, needed her to be there because the day that she does show up, that's when Superman's going to be there, and only she will be able to stop Superman.
And even now that you kind of explained it that way, I think it kind of still works in some weird way, you know.
Yeah,
But I think it would just been stronger if he'd have let that
but
actually
see,
been Martha.
and I've heard online, and this kind of annoys me, where people are saying, "Well, Lois really doesn't have nothing to do." No, she really doesn't have nothing to do. I'll tell you, I didn't think she really had nothing to do in the Wheaton version because they cut out all her
Absolutely
scenes.
nothing to do with the
And
Whedon
but
version.
this,
She was Batman's
yeah,
pawn, and
well, yeah, and that's could be, and I think that's problematic. But I understand why they chose to do it that way because when they were in Batman v Superman, the Nightmare sequence, you had Flash showing up the nightmare dream to Bruce and say, "Martha's the key, Martha's the key." Now I know
mm-hmm.
what Wheaton and Warner Brothers thought when they decided to take over Zack's film, which is, well, look, why not just have Batman bring her? Because Batman has always been known to be the greatest strategist. He thinks 3 steps ahead of everybody. So he knows that if this plan is going to go wrong, then I'll bring him the secret weapon. And everybody was assuming, oh, he's going to bring kryptonite. Well, no, his secret weapon was Lois. And when he brings her out, then it's like, see, Lois was the key, and she saved Superman and everybody else, and that would work. And I get it in the sense that that is a very Batman thing to do. But by doing that, you diminished her, because
Mm-hmm.
what we have in the Zack Snyder version is a woman dealing with grief. Now,
Yes.
if I'm hearing this whole thing about WandaVision was grief and how
Mm-hmm.
Wanda had to deal with grief. Well, you know what? Lois Lane also had to deal with grief. Snyder was setting us up. And what I loved about it, and Lee, I got to tell you, I think one of my favorite scenes is really that resurrection scene. I was so
When she comes out of the coffee shop and she sees him floating above the city.
before that, because remember, they're cross cutting between bringing Superman back and bringing the
Mm-hmm.
body to the ship to her in bed. And this is after the Martha scene, mind you. This is after Martha says, "You can do me a favor and you could re enter life again." Meaning,
Mm-hmm.
because even Martha's telling Lois that nobody knew my son. I know my son and you know my son, but but we still have to go on living. And so when Lois decides to get her pass back, her daily pet, but she opens the drawer and gets her pass at the same time that they're putting Superman into the water, and they're about to put the mother box and do all that stuff.
Right. Mm-hmm.
We see her actually go to the cop and give him his coffee and stuff. And the cop makes a comment. He says, "I didn't think you were going to make it." And she said, "Well, I wanted to be here one last time." And then
Right.
she goes back to the monument, and there's a look on her face, and this is really great acting from Amy Adams. Is that she was saying goodbye. She
Mm-hmm.
finally was saying, "I got to move on, but I want to say goodbye to you one last time." And you saw it in her face when she walked away. And then how
Right.
beautiful it was when she walked away, and then she looked in the sky, and then all of a sudden she sees her guy floating up. After, you know what it was?
Dude,
What I
that's a
thought was
moment. That was a
that it,
moment, man.
because you know what it was? It took Lois to grieve, and when she finally accepted the fact that Superman was gone, then Superman was reborn.